you know, it was all well and good until they started trying to convince us that Bert and Ernie were gay. Which, homeboy, come on. I I've had a roommate, right?
Mhm.
I've lived with other men, and
Yeah.
we didn't have sex with each other. Good morning, everybody. We're live on
Amazing.
all platforms this morning. No paywall to get behind. I've got Mario with us, and we're going to talk about defunding the sociopathy of American propaganda. You know what the most important article that we have to share on this topic is to begin with, Mario?
What is
Guess
that?
who it comes from? Can you guess
N-
who the article comes from?
PBS? NPR?
No, better, more important. Ready for this?
Yeah.
The Babylon Bee would
Uh,
like to announce we are joining NPR in suing the government for not giving us millions of dollars. The Babylon Bee would like to announce that we have officially joined National Public Radio in suing the government for not giving us tens of millions of dollars. The Bee only recently became aware that the government is supposed to give us a bunch of money for reporting the news. Apparently, the government not giving us truckloads of cash is totally illegal. Our not knowing that was frankly a pretty big oversight, and we have fired all of our lawyers as a result. We hired new lawyers, though, and they filed a motion this morning to join NPR's lawsuit in order that we may get the taxpayer money we so richly deserve. Not giving the Bee lots of money is a clear violation of our First Amendment rights, said Bee CEO Seth Dillon in a statement. The government simply has no legal basis for refusing to give us $100 million. It's right there in the Constitution. We proudly stand in solidarity with NPR, calling on the federal government to do the right thing and send us a dump truck filled with cash. Anything else would be tantamount to fascism. The Bee extends its thanks to all of our loyal supporters who are standing behind us in the fight against tyranny and also the fight for Seth to get a Lambo.
Who's Mike Cameron? You have 10 seconds to reply or be silent.
Ignore Cameron. Ignore Cameron. We have live is hard mode. Shit's going on behind the scenes, and I'm not going to interrupt the show to fix it right now. I
Okay.
know what the problem is, and that's enough.
Okay.
um. So that said, what's going on? Well, basically, the Donald is defunding leftist propaganda machines. So I only mentioned NPR and PBS in the thumbnail and the description, but primarily,
Can we
uh,
can I add something here? I've heard
yeah,
about
please do.
defunding. I've heard about defunding NPR and PBS since like George W. Bush's administration. Did you mean it just never happened?
Correct. It just never
Oh,
happened.
it just never happened.
Um,
Okay, got it.
so basically, Bush floated the idea, and they just never got it done. And then, if you recall, when Romney was running against Obama, they made a big stink out of him floating the idea to defund PBS. Remember, they said defund. They kept saying he's going to defund
Canceling
Big
Big Bird.
Bird,
Yeah, he was targeting
canceling
Big
Big
Bird.
Bird.
Big,
Right.
big, big, mean capitalist white man coming after a harmless, loving childhood character. Yes.
Now, one of the arguments, you're going to love this one. One of the big arguments for PBS and Sesame Street is that a lot of foreigners essentially come to America and read here. This includes, not exclusive to, but includes the hostile foreign invaders as well.
Mm.
And they learn English from Sesame Street. They learn English by watching Sesame Street.
Okay.
You know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Sesame,
My Italian ancestors didn't have Sesame Street. They learned the hard way. Hunger. They,
yes. I worked with, actually, you may remember this, Mario, when we were at DLI. I did a brief stint working with an adult literacy outreach program.
Mhm.
And somebody approached me at one of the poetry readings and asked me if I'd be willing to play a character for it. And what they had done is they took a local library and opened it up late night and did this whole celebration of people who had struggled with whatever, and achieved literacy in adulthood.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the cats was this. He
Yeah.
was an illegal immigrant.
Cue the 100-year-old black man who was a former slave who finally learned to read at the age of 60, and then he wrote a children's book. Yay.
Well, it was a fun project because what they did is they set the library up as kind of like a walking tour, choose your own adventure homage to Fahrenheit 451. I played one of the firemen kicking people out of rooms and setting books on
Okay,
fire, which
I like
was,
that book.
yeah, it's a great book.
Yep.
And I had a lot of fun doing that.
Hmm.
But, and I'd be totally down for programs to advance literacy. But here's the thing: you get the academics involved, and they're all captured entities. And so it's okay, we're going to teach everybody to read. And it's the exact same problem you have with Islam. Go to a Muslim country, and what they're taught is they're taught to read, exclusively reading the Quran.
Right.
So that their education in literacy includes a religious indoctrination. And this only happens in the most radically Islamic theocracies. You bring that over here, and what happens is the literacy program is run by the kind of people who are going to use genderqueer and those kinds of books
Yep.
as their basically as their Quran. And
Hmm.
so you get the exact same problem. It's just a
Yep.
different abusive and dangerous religion, right?
You're learning through the medium of like an indoctrinating worldview. Yes.
Correct. Not, you know, if you're starting with C Spot Run, you know, Dick and Jane go to the movies, that kind of stuff. That's great, sure. And literacy, hey, I'm a big fan. I read me some books. Um, and I mean, I highly recommend everything out there from Crime and Punishment to Silent Sights. Get it done. Good luck, because those are thick, hard books, but get it done. Now, what's happening now is basically Donald Trump is threatening to cut off funding to NPR.
Chris,
Go ahead.
Chris keeps all the dense literature sitting on the shelf behind the toilet. Okay, that's the perfect place for it. There's no excuse. There's no.
Correct. Actually, I used to, but since we've moved, I don't have as much room for bookshelves as I used to. Maybe the only complaint I have about the home in the country that we have now is my old house on the golf course. We actually had a library, as in a separate room in the house that was a library.
Well, man.
We kind of traded the library for an extra bedroom to accommodate my spawn.
Good.
We were running out.
Having a separate
We were running out of places to store my progeny.
having a separate room with nothing but books in it is possibly the height of white supremacy. I'm glad that you've reformed your ways.
Yeah, actually, the plan now is I'm just going to build I've got enough land. I'm just going to put an outbuilding out here and make sure it's insulated against weather and everything to protect the books. And I'll literally just have a library. It will be a separate facility on the property. That comes. I'm serious. Like this is part of the plan that the wife and I have. The studio comes first, and then the library. Truck, tractor, studio, library.
Excellent.
So what's happening? Trump is talking about defunding NPR and PBS, and let's start by looking at this article. NPR. This is from the FP.com. NPR and PBS aren't entitled to your tax dollars. National Public Radio is suing the Trump administration for cutting off its federal funds, which, according to NPR's complaint, is a blatant, textbook First Amendment violation. That's an interesting assertion.
Yeah, you are required to pay for our speech.
Yeah.
Isn't this like when you talk about like negative rights, okay, versus
Correct.
positive rights? You know what I mean? Like where the government is not. Yes.
Obamacare, like we've talked about Obamacare many times before. The argument for socialized medicine is that the Democrats argue that health care is a human right. Okay, that's asinine on the face of it. You have the right to life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness, certainly. Here's the thing about rights. Your rights end at my nose, which is to say, you have the right to speak. You can say anything you want to say. I have the right to speak. You have the right to disagree with me. As soon as you throw a punch, I have the right to defend myself. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Right? With the argument that human rights, with the argument that human rights include something like healthcare, that is an argument for slavery. It is the argument that someone else's labor is subject without compensation to your demand. And that is asinine. That the argument that free speech as a human right means that it should be funded is asinine. And I brought up the Babylon Bee article to begin with. If NPR and PBS are entitled to taxpayer funding because of what they do, so am I.
Yeah.
I'm speaking. I'm platforming myself. This show has costs and expenses.
Yep.
Now, I'm pretty good at
by that rationale. By that rationale, the government should be paying for Rumble exclusive for every citizen.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. A platform exists, ergo it must be funded, right? And we've pointed out in the past, that same argument. Healthcare is a human right, ergo the government must pay for my medical care, no matter if I'm perfectly healthy or if I've made bad choices and made myself desperately, fat and sick and lazy and dying, right? No matter how I've lived my life, you, the American worker, taxpayer, should be on the hook for my, fuck you. You know what? I have a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, which means you, the American taxpayer, should be funding my ammunition costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You owe me an M16 and 1,000 rounds quarterly. But obviously, that argument is asinine, right? So the argument that they're making, NPR seemed to have forgotten some free speech basics. As the District of Columbia District Court, the court where NPR filed suit on Tuesday, stated just a few weeks ago, the government does not abridge the right to free speech by choosing not to subsidize it. Boom. It really is that simple.
Yeah, that's it. Any argument you can make against that would basically have to convince to the court that there was like a malicious action taken intentionally to suppress one form of political speech over another, which they can only argue. Actually, by arguing that, they kind of reveal their hand, and that's exactly what they were doing or have been doing for decades. You know what I mean? They have been not exclusively, and nothing's 100%, but 90% left wing, a 90% left wing outlet, okay, for decades. So by shutting them down or defunding them,
did you say NPR was 90% left wing for decades?
Correct. NPR.
That's incorrect. I'm going to correct you on that, and I'll get back to that in just a second. To the point that you're making about viewpoint discrimination, though, I want to share this. This is the NPR chief.
Precisely.
What's her name?
Disgusting.
Yeah, but let's just make the argument.
President Trump's executive order against NPR and PBS violate the First Amendment. What's the case that you're making against the Trump White House?
Well, it's interesting because the executive order is very specific in that it accuses NPR and PBS of not airing fair or unbiased news. And so it is a textbook example of viewpoint discrimination from a First Amendment standpoint. Essentially, by blocking funding to NPR and PBS, it is a form of retaliation against our organizations for airing editorial programming that the president might disagree with. We're a nonpartisan news organization. We seek to be able to provide a range of different viewpoints in terms of who we bring on air, the stories that we tell. We're buttressed in this effort by the fact that we have 200 local newsrooms across the country.
Okay, so she just made the claim that they are a nonpartisan organization, right?
I guarantee, like, you can see the ugliness on their faces. They can't help themselves. Like,
yes,
there's something wrong with her face, and it's a
result her mouth doesn't move correctly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the plastic surgery or the fact that she's probably a lizard person. It's hard to tell. But she just made the claim that it's viewpoint discrimination. We're a nonpartisan organization. She made that very clear. We are a nonpartisan organization.
You're a rabid
This is from congressional hearings on the topic.
progressive. And do you not think it's a problem that your political leanings make it seem to the American people that you're not biased and that you're not doing your job? Because you agree that your job is to have journalistic integrity, right?
Absolutely, but there is a strong firewall between the newsroom and anything that I
Let's
do.
talk about the newsroom. You have 87 registered Democrats, not a single Republican in your editor board. So, I mean, how does that work to give us the perception that you're doing your job of actually delivering unbiased information?
How is it even possible that they could have 87 registered Democrats and 0 Republicans, 100% political unanimity in the newsroom? Just by do you want me to believe that they came across those numbers from the RNGesus? No.
I mean,
You don't roll nat 20s 87 times in a row.
Yeah.
You don't accidentally get a 100% ideologically pure organization without actually absolutely doing a purity test as part of your hiring practice.
the only defense of that would be if the possibility that 0 conservatives even apply for a job at NPR. Okay.
Right. And that possibility just does not exist.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Right. So, what were we saying? I was looking at one of the chats anyway. So, right, you could argue that maybe after maybe 3 decades, okay, 3 decades of leftist tilt, all right, from NPR, from PBS, that conservatives simply do not apply or do not even attempt to get these positions anymore. All right, I suppose that is a possibility. How many conservatives, how many right-wing people even attempt to go to school for journalism? All right, it just that we're talking about institutions that have been so ideologically captured for so long, like my entire lifetime, basically, that I don't know if we're even trying to put people forward in those fields anymore. That would be my defense of her if I had to choose some defense. But
right. Well, you can look at Hollywood. Hollywood has been so ideologically captured that, by and large, conservative people who grow up in a conservative household think of working in the film industry as a total pipe dream. That's not an option for you if you're not, if you're not a gay, trans, POC, blah 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 blah. If you're not basically waving a pride flag and screaming Black Power 24/7, then it's not possible to get into the film industry. That is, by the way, largely true. I could probably do an episode where we just pull up some of the job posting boards for the film industry, and you'll see that almost every one of them, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about actors, where there's a reasonable argument to be made for discrimination on the basis of appearance, color, ethnicity, background, all that stuff. Because you don't want Captain America played by a black guy because Captain America's not black, right? Except apparently, but it's not just the actors, because this is a story of a strong white father who raises his children, and so we don't want him played by Michael Clark Duncan. We want him played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's because that's the story that was written. But even when you start to get into the camera operators, the gaffers, the 2 ACs, etc., even people who aren't putting their hands on the equipment, they'll explicitly state things like straight white man need not apply for everything above and below the line. And it's not every film, but it's a lot of them. Now that's changing more and more with groups like Angel Studios, etc. But for a long time, that's been the case, and very much so too. That is the case at your institutions of academia.
Well, but before we go to academia, just on Hollywood for a second, like that's why we need to bring back Harvey Weinstein, because he provided a non-political, non-partisan way for anyone to get ahead of the other. Okay? And
Yeah, broad-size discrimination is totally acceptable, right?
Yep.
And give you an idea about the people in these institutions. When I went back to college after I was in the Army, I had a brief conversation with one of the professors one day. He looked like he was flustered, and I asked him, well, hey brother, you all right? What's going on? He said, oh no, I'm flustered. I'm
verklempt.
Yeah, there's too much going on, and we need to hire. Well, and he said we need to hire a new professor for this department. He was the department chair of the communications department, right? He said, and we're looking for a new professor, and we're having a hard time finding qualified candidates for the position. And I said, well, I mean, what position are you looking to fill? I mean, which, because it's the communications department. You look for public speakers. You look for somebody who does the tech side of it. And he just looks at me and he says, "Oh no, it has to be somebody with a PhD." I'm like,
why?
What do you mean by that? Well, no, I mean that's the job requirement. It's not the kind of people It's somebody with a PhD. I'm like, I'm a 35-year-old medically retired military intelligence operative, graduate of the single most competitive academic institution on the planet. What the fuck do you know?
Yeah.
Right? So, it's somebody with a PhD. It's somebody you know.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't possibly understand my lived experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, son, let me tell you something.
I think I recall.
You understand your lived experience because you made mistakes and you lived a shit fuck life.
Yeah, yeah.
It's nobody you would know.
Yeah.
and I basically told him, oh, well, you're a dumbass. Because I am certainly the kind of person that knows exactly the people you're looking for, and I would, as of this moment, absolutely never condemn them to work for your dumbass. You just lost out on probably the best candidate you possibly could have encountered. After that, I was asked to sit on panels for that same university to make hiring decisions. They would bring in candidates to do presentations, and I would critique them and write an opinion. And a few hiring decisions were made on my opinions. That's fun.
Good.
So, but speaking of colleges and institutions, so yes, NPR, PBS should absolutely be defunded. So should Harvard. So should Harvard and all of the Ivy League. I want to say right now all of the Ivy Leagues, but honestly, I cannot imagine there exists in this country today a single institution of higher learning to which I would not be offended to find my money being funneled.
Yeah. Yeah, Harvard, which basically is Veritas literally in the crest, okay? Nothing could be further from the truth. And it's been like that. It's been like that for a long time. I remember I went to college in New England, all right, just a small state school in New Hampshire. And what we would do for fun sometimes, we would go to Boston, of course, because that is our big city. And we'd roll through Cambridge.
I love the Boston market.
The fast food restaurant?
No, the Boston, the Boston market, the big open air shopping mall thing.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
Yep. So what we would do for fun is
Mario, I've been to New England a bit.
I know you live there. I know you live. You're even more of a Northman than I am. Okay, you were in Maine. I get it. All right.
Yeah, Norseman.
It's Northman.
I've been down east.
Yeah. So what we do, we didn't have a lot of money. So once we ran out of money, in Boston. Obviously, we'd have money for gas to get back, but then we would do for entertainment is we'd roll
I've been drinking with you. I wouldn't take that as obvious at all.
I wasn't driving. Okay. So for entertainment, we would do a little trolling. Okay, we would drive into Cambridge and just like drive through Harvard and look out the window and be like, "Hey, and like, yo, hey, Keene State represent," and like the people would turn and look at us, and it's like the prissiest assortment of like imagine like a Barbie dollhouse, okay, where all of the people were specifically selected based on race and gender. Okay, so you have this perfect little tapestry, perfect mosaic, all right, of of elite diversity, all right. So like the prissiest,
right,
zestiest looking black people, okay, the black woman with hair extensions out to here, all right, but it's all like coiffed in a manner as if she was like some 17th century French aristocrat woman. All right, like
so basically the OCS candidates that we saw at Goodfellow.
Basically, imagine the people from Panem, okay, from like Hunger Games. All right,
yes,
that's what these people look like, right? And we would just troll the shit out of them.
Oh no, you drink this and it makes you sick up so that you can eat more.
To the vomitorium.
Yeah. Yeah, say some shit like that to me in public. That's a great way to find yourself on the menu. We'll have a whole deep conversation about recreational cannibalism. Yeah. Jesus.
And that's
the only way you stop wasting options. The only way you stop wasting oxygen is to find yourself on the menu. You absolute.
So
detritus.
We should add now defunding Harvard. We should add that Donald Trump is doing this like ostensibly to combat anti-Semitism, right? Because a lot of these foreign students, what is it, like 30% of Harvard's undergraduate class is foreign, and a lot of those
that's actually a major national security threat.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You made the 30% thing. 31% of Harvard students are foreign students. And one of the things that Trump points out when he mentions that is that those countries they're not funding Harvard. They're not paying for these people to be here.
We're paying for them to be here.
We're paying for them. Yep. Yes. Hang on. In fact, let's hear it from the man himself. This is a national security threat.
Anymore to Harvard, but they're 31%, but they refuse to tell us who the people are. We want to know who the people. Now, a lot of the foreign students we wouldn't have a problem with. I'm not going to have a problem with foreign students, but it shouldn't be 31%. It's too much because we have Americans that want to go there and to other places, and they can't go there because you have 31% foreign. Now, no foreign government contributes money to Harvard. We do. So why are they doing so many? Number one. Number two, we want a list of those foreign students, and we'll find out whether or not they're okay. Many will be okay, I assume. And I assume with Harvard, many will be bad. And then the other thing is they're very anti-Semitic. Everybody knows they're anti-Semitic, and that's got to stop immediately. Look,
now, the whole anti-Semitic thing, frankly, I don't care. Well, it's one of those things where it's basically having a foreign policy that is effectively now look, America's foreign policy is beholden to Israel. Okay, that said, Donald Trump has been doing a good job to pump the brakes on that, on the worst impulses of that. Okay, I mean, if you didn't have Donald Trump in office, it's quite possible that we would have already sent B-2s from Diego Garcia and bombed Iran, okay, or done some outrageous provocative act like that. Okay, thankfully Trump is basically holding, I mean, he really likes to play a dangerous game, doesn't he? Like keep the wolves basically right next to him on a short leash in the hopes that they're not going to bite him, that he will be able to exert his control as master over them. I hope that doesn't bite him in the ass.
Well, you know what? In a lot of ways, I think Trump may be the caveman that was smart enough to start feeding the wolves by the fire.
Yeah.
So that we can eventually have toy poodles.
And then hitting them with a club when they growled at his children. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, he's beginning the domestication of America's foreign enemies. I'm here for it. And like I said in the chat, for all the guys out there that are, the Jews are responsible for everything. Oh, the Jews. I actually love that he's basically using the Jews as an excuse to take the money away from Harvard, the Jews, and give it to
Yeah.
trade schools, which is not the Jews.
Yeah, it's one of those rare instances where basically being beholden to Israel basically where my interests and I guess the State Department Israeli interest would align. Okay, we want the same thing, but for totally different reasons.
Right.
It's politics. You'll take it. You know what I mean? It's the way it is. So
Right.
yeah, that's it.
That said, I've got more clips from Trump on this that I wanted to share. I think it's this one. Yeah.
You want to talk about the Israeli couple that were killed very briefly?
Very briefly, but hold on a second.
With Harvard, and do you foresee?
I don't know. I don't know. Harvard's got to behave themselves. Harvard is treating our country with great disrespect, and all they're doing is getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. They've got to behave themselves. I'm looking out for the country and for Harvard. I want Harvard to do well. I want Harvard to be great again, probably. Because how could it be great? How could it be great when you have Harvard announced 2 weeks ago that they are going to teach remedial mathematics? Remedial meaning they're going to teach low-grade mathematics, like 2 + 2 is 4. How did they get into Harvard if they can't do basic mathematics? How did they do it? I mean, people with 1,600 in their boards don't get it.
That's like somebody going to DLI to learn fucking Spanish.
And they're letting people in, and they're bragging about how they're teaching them basic mathematics. Where do these people come from? So we have to look at the list, and Harvard has to understand the last thing I want to do is hurt them. They're hurting themselves. They're fighting. Columbia has been really, and they were very, very bad what they've done. They're very anti-Semitic and lots of other things, but they're working with us on finding a solution. And, they're taking off that hot seat. But Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are, and they're getting their ass kicked.
I love that
Trump's speech pattern is basically Christopher Walken minus the schizophrenia.
That's good. I like that. That's a good point. Here, go back for a second. Just give me a still image of that shot. I love Judge Janine here. Okay.
Yes.
She looks like Skeletor's mistress from He-Man. Like, unleash me, master. Unleash me.
You know what? She is about. I cannot wait to see what Judge Janine does, because Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have been so disappointing thus far. That's going to have to. I still have some faith that they're going to do the right thing, but I'm getting concerned with the two of them saying, "Oh yeah, Epstein killed himself." Now hold up. I hope that you're just trying to play it close to the vest until you're ready to spring the trap, because otherwise it sounds a hell of a lot like you got in there and they just slid you a picture of JFK and said, "You understand us, yes?"
I think it's one of those situations where you take the job. I don't know, but I've had a job like this. Obviously, not such an extreme example, but where you sit down in the chair, you look at the records, okay? You look at, and you're just like, I ain't the one. I'm not the one. And they should have the integrity to just tell Trump, like, I can't do it. It's too much. It's too much to unravel. I'm not the man to reform this organization. Very few people are that self-aware.
Correct. But and this is worth a show. The thing about Kash and Dan is they got put in those positions by saying, "I am the one." No, This is before they got set down in the chair and got the full brief.
Mm-hmm.
But going into those positions, it was, "Hey, on day one, we're going to," and then you didn't.
Yeah. Yep. Pam Bondi as well. Mm-hmm.
I think Pam Bondi is a completely different flavor of mistake.
Well, I mean,
But
I don't know. She hasn't.
okay,
She hasn't.
you wanted to wrap on the two consulates that got killed.
Yeah. I just wanted to.
So I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't actually paid a whole lot of attention to that story. It kind of came and went for me, and it's your fault.
Why? Because I wasn't here. Yes, you're right.
I actually made it a point to when it happened. I made it a point to put it off for a couple of days, uh, so that I could try and catch you to talk about it. And then one thing, and then it fell out of the cycle for me. So I never went back and read up on it. I'm generally
Well,
familiar with what happened, but go ahead and give it
Just
give it a kiss.
briefly, what I wanted to say is, we are using we're using anti-Semitism as basically as an excuse, all right, to defund Harvard. Okay, not that they don't deserve it, not that they. I mean, oh, and one thing that Trump said that was incorrect in his statement was, no, Harvard does take foreign money. Are you shitting me? Like Harvard is a whore. They'll take money from anyone. All right, they don't care. They are a massive cash vacuum, sucking it in from basically from their alumni organizations, from foreign governments to train their students. All right, and from the U.S. government as well through basically all the student loan initiatives. All right. Harvard is a whore that will take money from anyone. So that said, regarding the anti-Semitism, we did have last week a young Israeli couple. Okay, who were working in the Israel's foreign service. All right, so diplomats, right, who were executed in broad daylight in Washington D.C. Now, that objectively is a disaster. All right, when diplomats are getting smoked like in your nation's capital, that's an embarrassment. All right, that's an embarrassment for the host nation. So it is newsworthy, and it did deserve to be like maybe the top of the headlines. Okay, for a day. But what we had was a 48-hour nonstop press coverage of this incident, and bringing out and the hysterics and the histrionics. Okay, that went with it. That's what was basically that's what was pissing me off. All right, so anytime you have a situation like this, you're going to have like the ADL coming out and saying that anti-Semitism is on the rise for like the 100 millionth time. I cannot recall the ADL ever coming out any given year and saying that anti-Semitism went down this year. Okay, never happens. Okay,
Right.
absolutely never happens. Then you get like the Zionist lobby screeching about like October 7th, how it's another October 7th. Okay, the defense industry starts wagging the dog on Iran. Anytime something happens to a Jew or to an Israeli, you got basically someone with a hard on for defense spending talking about how we need to do something about Iran, or this all ultimately stems from Iran, okay, etc. You get the Chabad Lubavitch type people kvetching about historical events in Europe from 80 years ago. Somehow there's a direct correlation between two Israelis getting killed and that. All right, and then you get the State Department lamenting about, the UN is unfairly targeting Israel, and then you get Jewish academic hysteria over like the campus protests, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so and you see all that, how much attention is given, especially on Fox News. Okay, I mean, Fox News is basically the Israel channel at this point. And then if it was actually a young white couple that got killed in D.C., you might have like a 5-minute news segment, okay, on Crime Stoppers, about basically trying to find the assailant, but the assailant's photo would be blurry and they wouldn't even give you racial demographic information. So it's pretty glaring to me. All right, what the priority that the media gives to certain classes of people over other people. And that's all I really wanted to say about it. Okay. And I kind of been holding on to that for a week because I started getting pissed. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. I really don't have anything to add to that. So, you got anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up? Because I'm about to go throw Michael in the truck and go fishing.
Are you going to go meet? Are you meeting Pat?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So my father-in-law's in town, and in the comments there, and so we're going fishing today, with
what's
Patrick and the sergeant major, and
Let's
Go
take a
ahead.
minute or two and do some fan service here. Let's see if we got any good any chats here. All right.
Absolutely.
Um,
Well, and I'll do this real quick, Mario. I'll tell you funny. Borkham here. This is in fact my father-in-law. And he just joined Rumble yesterday. So I was solo yesterday. Mario wasn't here, and that's fine. I don't mean to shame him too much over me having to cover his topic without him, but because yesterday's show was totally your idea. But so at the end of the show, I had like 50 people watching on Rumble, right, and smattering across all other platforms, and I could, I can recognize most of the names in Rumble, and I have a pretty good recall on the handful of free memberships that I've given away. So I see a bunch of people that already have free memberships. While I'm running my mouth, Uncle Steve, let me know if you've won one of the free memberships or not. If you haven't, I'll give away one today. But and hopefully you'll get it. But anyway, so Paul was watching yesterday, and he got in the chat, and I started giving away memberships. One went to my dad, and then one went to my aunt. I was like, son of a bitch. Okay, let me roll the dice one more time. Third time's the charm. One went to Paul. So now Sergeant Major's already a paid up member, so he's basically he's won it twice. So he's basically paid the 12-month. He's paid the save $10 a year by buying the full year package for 12 months and ended up with 14. That's a pretty reasonably good deal.
Get stacked on membership. All right. So going here, St. Michael of Cigarillo says, speaking as someone who has listened to NPR and multiple time zones, I find it ridiculous to think that anyone can defend NPR when it comes to extreme bias. Well, I would agree with you. I've agreed with you since, well, I would have agreed with you for about basically the last 20 years. It's clear what they are. All right. Santa Stephen, talking about your library, says, Lord, Chris, think of how much stuff you could hide that certain people would never find, lol. Exactly. It could be like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, where he's hiding basically his personal fortune inside of the books and just stacks them on the shelves because he knows that no one will attempt to steal the books.
Exactly.
All right. And yeah, that's basically...
I've long made it a habit to use U.S. currency as bookmarks in the books that I read.
Yeah. Santa Stephen talking about the governor. I don't know what state you're from, so I don't know. Anyway, so
yeah, he's talking about Kemp. He's in Georgia.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah,
Kemp takes him some foreign money for sure. That's he's got some uncomfortable deals with the Chinese, basically from what I've seen under the surface. But
yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole to go down. I liked Kemp when he first ran. The first time I met him, struck me as a genuine guy. The first time I met him at a convention, I asked him, what his position was on the Second Amendment, and he said, obviously the Second Amendment is sacrosanct, and I don't remember exactly how he said it, but he basically indicated that he was wearing a pistol at the time, and that the Second Amendment was an absolute, and we should be constitutional carry in the state of Georgia.
Are you?
And that was pretty good in my opinion back then. But he's done a lot of good, but he's disappointed me on some important key things. Not least of which was the whole McMichaels debacle.
It's a mathematical equation. The longer a politician holds power, the worse they will get. The longer a politician holds the same position, the worse they will get, simply because they start getting paid. People start paying them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they become beholden to other interests. So I guess that's all we got for today. If you want to,
yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a pin in it there. Gotta get my boy in the pick 'em up truck and get on down the road. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. Is it Thursday already? So tomorrow's Firearms Friday.
Yes.
And we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching. Be safe out there. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.
Ciao.